Ashe. That's what we would say. We would say Ashe. That was wonderful. What a wonderful way to open and a wonderful way to start. So I'm going to turn over the openings and greetings to our co-coordinator, Dr. Jem Wise.
Good afternoon, everyone. As Dr. Cooper said, I am Jen Wise. I'm the Assistant Professor of Sociology here at Widener and the Co-Coordinator of African American Studies. We are very pleased to welcome you to our second installment of the African American Studies program Ngoma Conversation series. Today we have with us Mr. Michael J. Dennis, and he's going to speak on Black film representation or justice. And so I'm going to kick it over to Dr. Cooper as he's going to do a fuller introduction and he's going to facilitate some of our conversation today. So very much looking forward to it. Thank you all for
Excellent.
joining us.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wise. And a couple guidelines. We're excited. Again, this is our second of the launch. We believe that it's a great idea to use Zoom to have these conversations. And actually, we're being joined by, of course, a whole lot of people from Widener and a whole lot of people from around the world, actually. We have some people very far away that are in the breakfast mode. A former student, just to acknowledge one, Pangbala, brother, good to see you. And he's from much further away, but good to see you. So that's the great thing about Ngoma conversations, Ngoma, which means drum, that we can have these conversations. And we here in the African and African American Studies minor are happy to have funding from the series from our Dean of Arts and Sciences, Dean Lehman, which we thank him for. I'm going to give a fuller introduction, but I have to say I met Mike Dennis a while ago, and I know him pretty well. He is, I think he is a sage. He may call himself a storyteller, a historian and archivist. To me, now he's not going to accept this one, but I'm going to say it anyway. He's like, if we would say in black vernacular speak, dude is like a movie savant. Dude can, when he goes into his brain and starts doing a social deconstruction of movies, it's prophetic, it's deep, it's interesting. The artistic nuances are, I think, not just intellectual but culturally sound. He is the founder of RealBlack.com. He's an award-winning filmmaker, curator, and media host based in Philadelphia. He's a graduate of both New York University's Tisch School of the Arts and the American Film Institute Conservatory. His short films and documentaries have screened globally. He has worked with Chris Rock, Ava DuVernay, Oprah Winfrey, Bill Cosby when he wasn't the Bill Cosby that we know today, the Hudlin brothers, the recipient of the CNN I Report Film Festival Grand Jury Prize, and two-time Pew Fellowship finalist. Mike has curated film festivals since 1994. That was one of my early connections with him, and I've been on panels that he's curated over the years regarding black film. Django was one of them. When he was hired by Todd Phillips, the Joker, and Andrew Gerlin, The Last Exorcism, to bring Rusty Kundos's Fear of a Black Hat to the New York Underground Film Festival. He knows a lot of people. He's modest about it. He knows a lot of people in film. His passion and knowledge of black film has opened many doors. He helped me when I started my radio show. I had one in the city, and I asked, could he talk about film, and help me get connections in the industry? And this brother was phenomenal. He has a monthly screening series that ran from 2003 to 2019, the Real Black series, phenomenal series. He helped introduce local audiences to the work of Chuck Wu, Pete Chapman, and Matthew A. Cherry. He showcased restorations of classics like Watt Stacks, the great Watt Stacks, Sidewalk Stories, Real Black TV. He's captured interviews and most performances with artists like Spike Lee, Janae Monáe, Issa Rae, Patrice O'Neal, and the late, great Dick Gregory. Real Black Radio co-host with Stephanie, Renee, and WURD from 2014 to 2018, and he modestly helped me with my show and appeared regularly even prior to that. It is both my honor and my pleasure to introduce to some, reintroduce to others, my brother and colleague, Brother Michael Dennis. Mike D, good to see you.
Hey, can you hear me okay? I have a mic hooked up. Is it clear?
I can hear you very well.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Dr. Cooper, and thank you everybody who's joining us on their lunch break. Hopefully, you amped me up kind of big there. I don't know. I don't know if I can match things that way, but the intention of the talk today, I think, is to get more people thinking about how film can be used as a tool to help dismantle the systems of white supremacy. It's to discuss ways to further a Black aesthetic within motion picture and television, and to help promote a more discerning audience, because we are what we eat, and we're constantly being barraged with information. And disguised as entertainment. So those are the initial goals. And I just want to make a point before I get into the trailer. I just want to talk. Well, you've definitely associated me with being a unicorn. I think I'm the only person on this planet Earth that can say that they went to NYU, graduated, not just went, but graduated from NYU, the American Film Institute, and work with Bill Cosby, Oprah Winfrey, Chris Rock, and Ava DuVernay. So so I'm credentialed. I'm not just talking out of my neck, but hopefully we'll have a spirited discussion about how we can improve the work, the quality of work that we're seeing, to get it into a form where it's not just representation, but it's a form of justice. So without further ado, I would love to share with you a trailer that I cut for this thing. Hang on, let me see.
Mike, I have it actually. You sent it to me, so I could run it from over here if you want me to.
Let me see. Yeah, please do.
Hey, I have it set up. Yep.
Okay.
I thought we just might do it that way. So let's see. That way. Okay.
The image of blacks that we get in film is no way, in any shape or form, anything like what white folks get from film. One of the reasons is that, for the most part, the industry is controlled by white folks.
See, at least they make movies for white people to enjoy. Real movies with plots, with actors, not rappers, with real names, like Catch Me If You Can, like Saving Private Ryan. Black movies don't have real names. You get names like Barbershop. That's not a name, that's just a location. Barbershop, cookout, car wash. They've been making the same movie for 40 years. That's right, laundromat's coming soon. And after that, check cash and play.
I'm black, y'all, and I'm black, y'all, and I'm blacker than black, and I'm black, y'all, and I'm black, y'all, and I'm black, y'all, and I'm blacker than black, and I'm black.
The real question everybody wants to know in the world is Hollywood racist? Is Hollywood racist? You're damn right Hollywood's racist, but it ain't the racist that you've grown accustomed to. Hollywood is sorority racist.
You have to be colored to be on television.
Yeah, colored?
Yes, you can't be black. You have to have a little colored in there. Just a taste.
Tad.
Yeah, just to keep it interesting to America.
Yeah.
Neely Fuller has said, there are 4 possible ways that a victim of a system can respond. They can submit, They can cooperate. They can resist. Or they can engage in destruction of.
When it comes to movies, dude, you can't control that unless you got your own money. Unless you got your own money to make movies. I mean, Hollywood is Hollywood, dude. It's not, it's the belly of the beast, man, when you get into that game, man. There's a lot of people, that's another thing about Hollywood. You know, if you're Tom Cruise, you the president. You owe. And if you want to be the president, man, you owe somebody. You don't get there without owing somebody. You know, you owe somebody favors.
The fear of clocks, the fear of time. How's the cost of living? Ain't that much time left? I've got to bump you now. I take what I've been given. Ain't that much time left? I've got to bump you now.
What do you think that these executives are afraid you're going to do to white America?
Probably stop some racism.
Stop racism?
Yeah, I'm probably afraid of that because then people don't hate each other, and people start talking to each other, and then they start talking to each other, they find out who's the problem.
Which is?
Greedy people.
Greedy.
So that's the trailer for our upcoming project that sort of was sparked by this conversation. About 2015, I put a movie out called Black Film Now, which explored the state of Black film then. And I think it's time to do a new one in the sense that we have so many more films being made that represent Black people. And a lot of that comes from the economic situation where there's so many more streaming platforms and places for work to be seen, including Real Black TV on YouTube. But also the reaction to the Oscar So White hashtag and the George Floyd murder that we all saw last summer. There's been a huge reaction in terms of trying to get more diversity in screens, and you're seeing it now on television and commercials. There's a reaction to the Asian hate crimes. You're seeing a lot more Asian people in TV commercials now than you've ever seen before. And, it just raises the question, is this representation or does it represent justice? Do we get the same level or quality of storytelling mythology out of Black film that we do out of movies made by and for the dominant culture? So the first thing to ask is, what is Black film? And I for the sake of this conversation, I'll go with the loosest definition. Black is perception. If you look at it and you say that's a Black film, it's a Black film for all intents and purposes. More specifically, my definition would include authorship, and then it would drill down to agency. That's important to me. Do the characters have agency? Do they have the right to determine their life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness within the context of the story? But we're going to go with a loose definition for the sake of this conversation. But again, if you're looking at my manifesto, Black film includes the right to exist without agency, without like a white compatriot or buddy or someone that determines the fate, that is sort of a secondary protagonist in the story. The right to choose the moment of the mortality. That's why we showed the scene from Queen and Slim. To me, the film was very good until it got to the ending where the right to die is taken away from the main characters. It becomes an arbitrary moment, and it leaves an unsettling feeling for Black people in the audience that I've spoken to, because it reflects too closely our reality. It does not exist it does not take advantage of the possibility of fantasy or in terms of the existentialism idea of the characters. You know, it's too rooted, it's too grounded in reality for it to work for me as a successful Black film. It's definitely a Black film. And then the right to experience healthy relationships is important to me. There's too much trauma drama in this current renaissance of Black film for my taste. It's justified by saying that, oh, well, it happened in real life, it happened in the past. Films put out, mainstream product does not use that as a consideration. It's there as entertainment, it's there as escapism, and I'd love to see more escapism. So I'm just saying all this just to promote the idea that there are like-minded people watching and thinking about this and thinking about how they can put this into their work without fear. You know, Dr. Cooper, did you have any questions at this point, or should I move on?
I think what in terms of questions, we're going to ask that people place them in the chat. If you'll direct them to myself, I'll try to read them out. And there's probably several just in regards to what you've done so far. I have 40 questions or thoughts.
Okay.
From Oscar.
All right, well, let me just move through this. I'll move through the stump speech quickly because I know we're on limited time. So why is it important to me? You know, I wouldn't be here if not for Martin Luther King. I literally was a Martin Luther King scholar at NYU. I got a full tuition for 4 years as a result of my genius, I suppose. But it was targeted, at that point, it was targeted directly to African Americans, people who otherwise would not have the opportunity to attend a school like NYU, if not because of financial need. So, you know, I was, like the Kehinde Wiley says, I was stamped from the beginning. From my very first day at film school, I felt an obligation or a connection, let's say, to the civil rights movement that this man sacrifice helped me to get my voice out there. And also, I've always seen film as a form of propaganda and a way to get ideas out and be subversive. So those are two things that helped shape me. But it was being a Martin Luther King scholar and traveling to Senegal, to Dakar, Senegal, when I was in my junior year. And I wish I had the graphic of this, but I'll paint a picture for you. I always went to the movies whenever we went on these trips abroad. We were given trips abroad as part of the scholarship. So when we went to Senegal, I wanted to go to the movie theater, and I was told where the movie theater was, and I walked there, and it was closed because it was a Monday, like today. It was a Monday, and the movie that was playing at that time was Coming to America. And I would have loved to have seen it in French, but it was not available to me. But the poster was, and it was outside the theater, and it was taller than me at the time. I'm looking up at it. It's one of these quad sheet posters. It's about 4 foot by 3 foot wide, and the title for the film was A Prince in New York. And that hit me really hard. I was like, wow, you know, I'm here in the middle of Africa, and here's Eddie Murphy sort of returning as a prince to signify to the local people. And right after that, I couldn't get into the movies, started walking with my friend, and we saw some kids playing soccer. and they were in a big football field, and they said, "Hey, come play with us." So we played. We kicked the ball around a little bit, and it turned out we were at their school, and it was on a campus. And they said, "Hey, would you like to see our school?" And it was a Catholic school, so we said, "Yeah." And we were walking around. We walk inside, and this is a defining moment in my whole life. We walk inside and look on the ceiling, and there's a big painting of Jesus Christ, but it's not a African hued Jesus Christ. It's the typical Anglo-Saxon white Christian model of Jesus Christ, painted not 4 feet but 50 feet on the ceiling. And those two images within a space of an hour really had an impact on me. I asked myself at that point, which would have the greater impact, the one that's providing the soccer field or the entertainment in the film. And so that definitely shaped my perspective. It makes me feel more of a responsibility to create content or entertainment or film, what have you, that speaks with a sense of consciousness to it, because it is an existential question. Do we exist without the ability to control our art? And up until now, film has been financed by, as Charles Wood says in the trailer, controlled by predominantly white voices. The images that we show in the trailer that I feel contradict some of this brainwashing have been made outside the studio system and brought inside. But now we're starting to see a large number of people not only making film, but getting training at making film, getting on the job training to make and tell stories about Black people. But are they the kind of stories that are going to be healthy and helpful in the long run? Because cinema's been weaponized against Black people since Birth of a Nation. And with this current wave of film, I think there is an opportunity to help dismantle the system of white supremacy. Representation is just one part of it. So with that, I'll leave it to you.
Great.
Hopefully that
Thank you
sets
so much.
hopefully that sets up the conversation.
Oh, it sets it up. We have questions pouring in, so I'm going to go to the first couple in a row, just in an effort not to ask my questions, but to ask the audience's questions. So thank you so much for facilitating these talks. I'm curious, once he's done speaking, if Mike would share his thoughts about Black artists today who are leading the way to new imaginings in Black film. Michaela Coel, C-O-E-L, if you're familiar with her, if I'm pronouncing the name correctly, is the first person that comes to mind for me. However, I'd love to hear his added perspective.
Well, who's the person that she...
Michaela, C-O-E-L.
Oh, Michaela Cole. Okay, I'm not familiar with the work, but and that's one of the problems with having a conversation like this. There's so much work just flooding down the pipelines. I can't necessarily target. I'm going to target Queen and Slim because I paid money to see it, and I feel I have every right to criticize it. But I'm not. I don't want to single out artists who are not necessarily doing the job the way I feel it should be done. There's a book out now called The Black Gaze, which centers on artists that are working in film, painting, music, other art forms that are more fringe than mainstream Hollywood, that are trying to take back the power. So Arthur Jafa is probably the most predominant of those voices. He was the cinematographer for the movie Daughters of the Dust, which is a film. Julie Dash is somebody who definitely fits the bill as someone whose work has been helpful in advancing this idea of a Black aesthetic. but Arthur Jafa, he also did the music video for 444. He does a lot of collages, video collage work that, kind of assaults your senses in a way, but is got a very, very clear intention. So I would suggest checking out his work. Terrence Nance is another artist whose work screens at Black Star Film Festival every year, who's doing stuff. He was supposed to do this new Space Jam reboot, but he got let go of the movie, off the movie after a week of filming. So he gets the story credit, but he doesn't get the directing credit. They went to a more mainstream voice for the direction of that movie. So I think there are people that are pushing at the boundaries of what mainstream cinema can do for Black people. But and Ava DuVernay certainly, with Queen Sugar, and her plethora of new projects, The Colin in Black and White and all that stuff, is pushing hard. I would suggest looking at her second film, Middle of Nowhere, if you want to see what the potential is, for telling a story about Black people, where they have agency, and it's dealing with very existential questions of what it is to be Black in the society. So hopefully that answers your question.
Great. And what is really great, and to be in African and African American studies, we have an international audience on here. So one of our next questions says, what's the connection between African American films and Nollywood, the Nigerian film industry? If any, what's the influence of the motherland on African American, of the African American film landscape, in your opinion?
Well, my understanding, Nollywood is strictly commercial product. I mean, there's a lot of things that are like soap opera that are just totally geared towards escapism and to pass time. There's, I think it's the documentary Nollywood Babylon, I believe is the one that I saw. There's also one called Welcome to Nollywood that came out a few years ago. But basically that whole industry exists because television and electricity is not as commonplace as VCR. So what they don't have like a TV network. So what they were able to do was put together very inexpensive movies that could be passed around. And now you're starting to see them online. But I don't want to discount what Nollywood is doing. I think it serves as an excellent model of what can be done with African Americans on a business level, but on a creative level, I think that we are way, way, way ahead. And I have some friends who are trying to make work in Africa so they can bring their talents to the motherland. But I think the cross-pollination has yet to happen. And from what I've seen of Nollywood films, they're not promoting or doing anything that I'm talking about, which is trying to address the issues of race without being nail on the head, trauma dramas. So, but I could be wrong. There's thousands of movies. Like as we speak, 50 movies just dropped, so.
And could I add to it, just do you have thinking in general what people of the role of what we call here the diaspora, but what do you see any connections to foreign films produced by people of African descent relative to the topic that you're discussing today?
That's a good question. Well, I mean, if you go back to the masters, the Usman Sembens of the world, I think they set the tone. Sankofa just dropped on Netflix, and that's a movie that's heavily inspired by the first wave of African filmmakers. But the argument that we're making, and when I say we, me and Charles Woods, who's not on the chat today, is that anything that's sort of geared towards a commodification or capitalism is the primary motive is not going to fulfill the needs, because it's the same people that sell you candy or put things on televisions, and then they'll sell you candy, and then the next commercial will be, do you have diabetes? So we're trying to provide an antidote just by opening the conversation up to the possibility, but I think it's going to take a fearless artist or camp of artists that is as aggressive as the Black Lives Matter movement, to see the change, because Hollywood is not necessarily interested in seeing this change. And as I just mentioned, Terrence Nance was hired to do the new Space Jam movie with Bradford Young, who is a premier cinematographer, and he got let go by Warner Brothers. He was pushing it too far, apparently. So, within the diaspora, I'm sure there are things that are happening. I'm just not aware.
Question: are you familiar with the work of Sembine
Usman?
Yes, during your training years.
Yeah, Black Girl. Yeah, that's who I just mentioned. So, Black Girl is his seminal work, and it has all the things that we talk about. The woman. I don't want to spoil it, but she's unhappy as a maid in France, and she's given a choice to continue working for the man, for these white people who are abusive, or to take her own life. And she has control over it's not necessarily the happy ending that we want from American films, but it speaks to the power of determining your own fate. So, I mean, that's a primary example of what film can be used for. There's documentaries, Frantz Fanon, Black Skin, White Mask, documented by Isaac Julian, is another piece that evokes these ideas. If you want to go deep into it. Otherwise, I say watch Coming to America, watch Boomerang. Those are mainstream movies that are basically Black films that have wide commercial appeal.
Of course, we would expect to get a Tyler Perry question here, so we're going to ask the proverbial Tyler Perry question. I have heard debate about whether or not Tyler Perry films reproduce racial stereotypes. What are your thoughts on this debate?
They do. And I think that stereotypes can be used as shorthand to get broader ideas across. Unfortunately, I don't know if Tyler Perry's interested in that. I don't think he's got a large body of work, tremendous body of work, and I don't think he has any interest in doing that level of, in terms of the representation or justice question. I don't think he's interested in that. But I do think that what has been great about his run is that he's been able to employ people and give them opportunities and experiences to make film. And as we see in the previous Black Film Now movie, Issa Rae says, I think Tyler Perry was such a force that, I'm paraphrasing here, that it made a lot of us want to do the opposite, just to prove a point. So I think there is a place for Tyler Perry, and it's just, when do we get the opposite? That becomes the question. It's not, does Tyler Perry use stereotypes? It's, can you use stereotypes differently, within a realm? I think of the movie Boomerang with the late John Witherspoon, playing the father of David Alan Grier, and he comes in and he steals the scene, just doing the most coonish, buffoonish kind of act, but it's counterbalanced with all the other characters that are more realistic. And I think he attempts to do that with House of Pain, with the caricatures, but also complement them with real life people. But I think too often in terms of sitcoms, it becomes a lot easier to write for the caricature than it is to write for the person who's serious.
Excellent. We have a lot of questions. I'll just keep firing.
Okay, I'll try and answer them shorter then.
No worries. No, I did call you a movie savant. I do recall saying that in the introduction. What do you think it will take for the future of filmmaking cinema to dismantle systems of white supremacy? How does the current generation of young adults play a role in this vision?
Well, I'm skeptical that it'll ever happen because it's the system is in place, and as long as we have the schools set up the way they are and the money, every piece of money has white faces on it, there's going to be this subconscious association with white is right. So I'm just suggesting that artists can use the opportunities that they have to tell better stories. And maybe, we'll have the next generation will grow up in a world where there's a more of a sense of a limitless possibility. Right now, I think we're more concerned with diversity than we are with inclusion. And as long as we have to use their field, their bat, their ball, I don't think it's going to happen. But what I would like to see is, as we talked about with the diaspora thing, is for people to cultivate their talent in the commercial space, but then come back. And that's something that we don't always see. It doesn't happen very often unless there's pressure applied, where people with adequate or substantial resources come back and give back to those whose talent needs to be cultivated. That's something that I saw firsthand at the Black Lily. I did, the Black Lily was a women in film series founded by the Jazzy Fat Nasties. And the first wave of artists that found success through there became a hot thing in Philadelphia. And a lot of artists got signed to record deals. And what happened was, when they got signed to record deals, they couldn't come every Tuesday night and perform and inspire the next wave of artists. They had to be at the studio. They had to be on tour. They had amplified their voice in a way, but it didn't leave any seeds left in the field for the next crop to flourish, so it ended up dying in itself, and so I'm really big, although I'm in hibernation right now, I'm really about the give back. I think it's really important that people show their face when they're in, especially in a place like Philadelphia, make others feel like that you are accessible to them. I feel like Night Shyamalan could have done a lot more when he was hot, just by showing up at local gatherings and saying, hey, you want to work on my movie? Or, hey, there's an opportunity here. But I think he had this mystique about him where he wanted to be the only one. He modeled himself after Hitchcock, and he wanted to be the only person who could do that. And I don't think that serves us as a tribe to have that mentality. And it's good to see, with pressure applied, that there are some people that are now billionaires that are giving back. Big ups to Beanie Siegel. I hope he gets his $50 million from Kanye. So,
next question. Do you think that filmmakers, writers should be more intentional about producing their own, more biopics to get at agency and a didactic for authenticating who we are in the diaspora?
Yes, I do. But I also think that resources need to be available so that you can make the best work. I mean, I think that too often people try to go it alone, and film is a collaborative effort. And in the past, we did have to go it alone. Spike Lee is the model of guerrilla filmmaking, because at the time, you had to write, produce, direct, do craft services, hire your dad to do the music, and shoot in your neighbor's brownstone in order to get a movie made. But now we have people that are lawyers. We have people that are only interested in doing sound mixing and coloring and all that stuff. So, but they require money. So I think it's important to try to get projects together that speak to what you just asked, but also have enough commercial appeal so that you can compete, because ultimately, and I learned this helping distribute films for Ava, opening weekend, we all have the same amount of time in each day. We can't just go to support stuff just because it's Black stuff. We have to support stuff because it's good stuff or because it speaks to us. So we're past that time. And the only way to get your work seen and out there, I think, is to make it of exceptional quality so that you can get the money, you can get people that are willing to work for free to be a part of it, that you can get the right actors to want to take a cut in their pay, work for scale, so that they can help we can help put each other on.
Excellent. So we have a comment, and then I'm going to read a question, and the comment which I wholeheartedly agree with, and it's something that Dr. Wyse and I have talked about. I believe a future conversation is needed to address the representations of Africans in movies produced in the West and other regions. We've said the same thing about the minor. If your minor is going to be African and African American studies, it can't just focus on the quote United States side of things. So we certainly agree, and we agree in film. The next question is, well, since you mentioned it, I'd love to hear your critique, your short critique of Coming to America. I think that there were many things that can be called to question about the film, and I'm curious how you feel the remakes like that help or hurt the image of Black communities, both domestically and in the diaspora. These are great questions, by the way.
So she's talking about the original Coming to America or Coming to with the number 2 America?
The number 2. Coming.
Oh, it was garbage. It was a money grab. Just next question. It was just a money grab. They had no reason to do it other than they saw an opportunity to make some money.
Great. There's some comments. Black Girl is brilliant. Okay, we got some folks talking to each other, which is fine. Do you believe that, this is a great question. Actually, it's something I follow too. Do you believe that Quelly TV are reaching new heights?
I've been invited, like every week I get an email from somebody either saying I should be on Quelly with the Real Black channel on YouTube, or that I need, or Quelly themselves saying, hey, be a part of us. I have not investigated it enough to answer that question, but I know it's a great alternative, and people should check it out.
Great. Let me throw in a question as we have a few minutes left, and that is, it looks at the premise in your argument about social agency. Black cultural production, or African cultural production in America and in the world, whether it's singing, dance, arts, aesthetics, typically, most of the time was degraded by the colonizers, Eurocentric viewpoint. And then somehow through germination or acceptance or stealing, it becomes popular, and then it becomes a money-making kind of revenue machine. So I guess the question is, it would seem to me still that from blackface to now, that Black people, whether we're talking about cinema or whether we're talking about hip hop, still struggle to get a more righteous, a more activist form or brand of the product out. And I guess I'm wondering, it seems to me, and I'll stop here with the question, it seems to me we can fund anything else that we want to fund on our own, whether it's bootleg or otherwise. Isn't there some kind of a model for us to kind of develop this social agency without having to depend on someone else?
That's the eternal question, right? Why, because we all see it. Why aren't we there yet? And I think it's just easier to sell candy and then sell you the medicine for your obesity later than it is to cultivate something that's healthy from the start. And so what I'm suggesting isn't an easy road or easy path. It's sort of like, until recently, I'd never seen a Chinese restaurant go close or McDonald's go out of business. But I've seen plenty of health food stores go down the drain. So what I'm suggesting is sort of a health food store model. It's not necessarily the thing that a capitalist is going to want to invest in right away, and it's certainly not the kind of thing that a white investor wants to be targeted as. Like financing a movie that's going to point out a flaw or lead to their destruction. That's why so many of these civil rights movies that came out during the Obama era, like Hidden Figures and The Butler, they had white allies. I mean, it was disgusting to me, that in The Butler, they would make Ronald Reagan the person that gives the butler a raise, when we all know what Ronald Reagan did for Black people in real life, as a community. So, yeah, I mean, if it's possible, but and it has to be done outside the system, but I'm still skeptical because we're dealing with the other systems, the system of capitalism. We're not giving out PBS grants anymore to finance movies. This stuff has to make money. I applaud what Ava DuVernay is doing because she's pushing things through the system that otherwise would never have gotten made or made it past a meeting. The Colin Kaepernick series is a prime example of that. So I think it just takes some bravery on the part of artists to open the door for this. But I don't necessarily know if the capitalists are going to be the ones. And then, but the barrier of entry is so much lower. In another, right now, you can make a movie like Star Wars on your laptop, and with the right, in a couple of years, you can. I mean, right now as we speak, you're distributing this talk all over the planet via YouTube. So the tools are in place. The barrier of entry's been dismantled. It's now, is the content. Are we going to pander to audiences? Or are we going to try and do things to uplift them? But I think the reason why we don't see what you're talking about is industry related. It's just easier to sell certain ideas and things. It's easier to sell candy than it is to sell broccoli, and broccoli will go bad. So
excellent. Tell people how they can find your YouTube platform and any other thing you want them to know about in terms of what you're doing.
Yeah, sure. It's realblack.com, REELBLACK. If you just Google the word Real Black, you'll see like everything that I've ever done in life, because we're all being recorded. This is the Big Brother era, but I feel like I've done a lot of good things in this world. So if you go to the YouTube channel, this is the tool to get you started. If you type in the year you were born and the word Real Black in any search engine, you'll see videos that will relate directly to your experience. And then if you want to take it a step further, the year you were 5 years old and the word Real Black in the YouTube search engine, you'll start to see videos that relate to your childhood, your nostalgia. And then you're locked into the algorithm. I gotcha. And you'll be stuck there for days watching Dick Gregory videos and all kinds of stuff. So I bet you can't do that. The same way I'll do the Hannibal Buress, Google Real Black and the year you were born and see what comes up.
Excellent. I want to thank you, Mike Dennis. I want to thank the audience. Dr. Wyse and I believe that we can use the Zoom platform this way to bring together an audience vis-a-vis the drum in Ngoma and have these kind of conversations. They're never going to be detailed enough. They're never going to be long enough. But we hope we can keep them interesting enough to keep bringing the village together and taking these on. If you have a suggestion about something you would like us to try to cover in the future, stick it in the chat. We do these the third Mondays of the month. As they used to say, same bad time, same bad channel, noon on the third Monday to 1. The topics will vary. And again, we thank you all for coming out today. And Mike D, Mike Dennis, we thank you so much. Round of applause, visual, the little hand icon, whatever.